Well, Nanea, happy holidays. I think it's T minus 9 days till Christmas. Not that I'm counting. Um, how was the Sacred Sites tour in Iceland, where I saw you a few weeks back?
You should have joined us. It was actually kind of amazing. I think Tristan did a really great job. I really enjoyed spending time with Runa, the guide she brought along, and it was a beautiful way to see Iceland through that lens of their history with the island, and also just to hear the lore, especially that Runa had grown up with, who she was very much native to Iceland. So yeah, it was a fascinating experience. And it was a little bit kind of like a honeymoon for me and Jeff as well. So we
Oh, well,
haven't had, yeah, we hadn't had the time to take um, to really celebrate after getting married in June, and just because of work demands for both of us. And so having to be there for your event as well as the Conference in Barcelona, I dragged Jeff along.
oh,
Uh,
okay. How was
it's,
that?
it was great, actually. And Tristan's guide, Runa, gave us a beautiful blessing at this little teeny church out near the edge of the water. It was really lovely. So
Very
thank you
cool.
for
Yeah,
helping make that happen.
I was very much on the fence. It's kind of hard for me to want to enjoy those things without having my wife along as well, and
Mm.
so and I haven't really seen Iceland outside of Reykjavik, so that is on the to do list. But I want to go back with my wife when we have a couple weeks to just drive around.
Yeah, it's a beautiful country that weirdly enough reminded me a lot of Hawaii, despite the temperature difference. So
Yeah, well, it's an island.
volcanic, yeah, the
Well,
volcanic
you
area.
can go up to the top of Haleakala and get some snow sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So
Just
speaking of Hawaii, let's because I can't recall exactly where you grew up, whether it was in California or Hawaii or a combination.
well, it was kind of California, Hawaii, New York, Toronto, some early years in Europe, and even the Middle East and Beirut. Um,
So what drove all that hopping around as a young child?
yeah, there's I'm part Asian and Hawaiian. I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Irish, and Welsh. And there's some rumors of Norwegian sailor blood in us, as well as Italian on my mother's side. And um, so both of my grandmothers, their second husbands, were Jewish. And those were the ones I grew up with as my grandfather. So it was just kind of a very eclectic childhood. But because my grandmother was Hawaiian Chinese, the tendency to have the family all live together, aunts, uncles, cousins,
Right.
community, it's very much a part of our culture. And so my grandparents were always in the picture. And my grandfather was head of worldwide sales for Britannica
Oh,
Encyclopedia, and he was
yeah.
very innovative, very innovative. And so we traveled around a lot for his work, and he would set up sales organizations in different territories. And eventually he also became a commercial real estate developer, which is how he ended up in Toronto. And uh, in addition to that, my mother always struggled with drug addiction. I personally believe she was trying to self medicate her mental illness. So it made me and my sisters very vulnerable, and the grandparents on both sides of our family would swoop in and take me and my sisters, to get us out of peril. And then, so that contributed to a lot of the bouncing around, going from different relatives, spending summers with different aunts. And, but I'm grateful for having that extended community for sure. And it shows the importance for that, especially when there are problems within a family. And I worry about a lot of the young people today who don't have those extended families and really strong communities around them, because I could see how it really was
Yeah,
beneficial
though
for me.
it does seem a little bit like the economy is almost driving a little bit of that family communal living again. Young adults, having to stay home and living with their parents, just because of the cost of living and so forth. And
Mm,
but but no, well, my wife's family lives, within 3 blocks of each other. Her parents and her two sisters and a couple of her brothers, so they're very very close knit. Um,
yeah.
just I want to circle back for you. So both of your grandparents, uh, your grandmother's second husbands, both your
Yes.
mother and your father, both married Jewish men in their second
Yeah.
marriages. And is that
Yeah.
by coincidence or some kind of
I
relationship
don't know.
between those two gentlemen?
Yeah. I no. I think and it's really strange because my grandmother, who is Hawaiian Chinese, um, it was a big deal for her to get divorced, and for her to marry someone, completely different faith, different culture, is also a pretty big deal if you know a lot about the Hawaiian culture, and 'cause we're very much sort of bloodline lineage
Yeah.
oriented. And what family you're from is probably the most important status you could have in the Hawaiian culture, as opposed to how much money you've made, or what you've been able to achieve academically. And so I think, one, it was just very innovative to grow up with a mixed cultural environment. We always celebrated Hanukkah and Christmas. I love that. At one point, I actually told my grandpa I wanted to be Jewish, because somehow I had perceived that, because both of their families were so tight, and I had this concept that they treated their children better than what I was seeing from my own mother. That I said, I want to go to Hebrew school. I want to be Jewish now. And my grand.
I did not want to go to Hebrew school.
Well, I got very upset after a couple weeks of going, when I found out that there's a prayer that gets said where you think, God, you weren't born a woman. And, it really upset me. And I came home crying, and I said, I don't want to go back there anymore. And my grandfather said, you don't have to.
Yeah,
So
well,
I
yeah,
didn't get
and
bat
women are
mitzvah.
in very Orthodox Jewish families. Women are treated very second class, unfortunately.
Yeah, that seems to
But
be.
but both in New York and parts of Israel. But this is ultra Orthodox that we're talking about. And which island did you grow up on for the majority of the time?
Well, the Reeves family and my grandmother's family, which they're the Victor family. They're both pretty prominent Hawaiian families there. They pretty much cover all the islands. We could say the Maui faction, that is, sometimes different factions of the family host the family reunions. That would be the smallest one, and it's about 350. So it kind of gives you an idea. But, you spend most of your time on Oahu, and then different times of the year. In August, we would all go to Kauai, and
Okay.
uh, and then spend a lot, because it's about 10 degrees cooler than the other islands. And then uh, sometimes people would spend Christmas on the Big Island. And so, just we'd bounce around from one island to the other, but centralized mostly on Oahu.
How did you like Toronto?
I love Toronto. Toronto's an awesome city. It, yeah, it's, I loved it. I think um, it's gone through a lot of changes. I haven't been there in recent years, but I loved it. I felt like it had a very eclectic community where we lived. We lived in the Bay, Yorkville
Hmm.
area, around Yorkville Avenue, and it was a lot of fun. I have really fond memories of these massive neighborhood hide and go seek games. You think about like as kids, like we were hiding. Whoops, sorry.
Well,
Let me. I banged the microphone.
that's okay.
As kids, we would during the summer just play hide and go seek for hours into the evening and run and hide in construction sites and running across beams. I mean, you think about like the fearlessness that we had as kids back then. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time there.
And so you mentioned growing up with couples sisters. How many siblings did you have growing up?
I have one sister, my sister Vicky, who's full blooded sister, and then I have a half sister named Laura. We have different fathers.
Okay. And where are you in the oldest, youngest, in the middle?
I'm the oldest, and I think
Oldest.
because of my mother's addiction problems, I definitely grew up with this huge sense of responsibility for both of my sisters. And, as a child, I had the sense that I was constantly failing uh, in taking care of them, do you know? So it's something that I definitely look back at to try to understand more how that has influenced me as an adult, and has shaped me in positive ways, but also I think some areas to evolve, as it were.
And were you still kind of moving between cities during your teens and later teens?
Uh, Later teens, I pretty much ended up in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I came to Los Angeles when I was 14, and by that time, I was having my own problems with drugs and alcohol, as was my sister Vicky, and she was 12, and we were living with my mother at that time, and it was not my mom's best time for just being a parent. So we came to this big city, and in many ways, we're kind of living on our own, unsupervised, and it was very challenging. And I had a few experiences happen to me that were pretty traumatic, as did my sister. And I ended up in a mental health hospital as a result of it. I was age 15. And, you look back and you have a hindsight on certain experiences and you realize this was the biggest blessing in my life, cloaked as this epic tragedy. And the reason for that was there was a therapist there. Her name was Victoria Riskin. She was the one I got assigned to after, and she's a wonderful woman. I had the good fortune of connecting with her right after she had done this trip to Nepal, where she had met these Tibetan monks there living in exile, and they taught her Tibetan meditation techniques. And I think she had already been exposed to doing Vipassana meditation. But during one of our sessions, I was having an anxiety attack, a pretty significant panic attack. And she had me do this breathing technique she had learned there called kumye. And you visualize the breath coming in through the mouth and the nose at the same time. And the breath going through the nose going to the mind's eye to kind of quiet it, and going through the mouth, the breath bringing that inhale down into the heart to quiet the chest. And many times when we do have anxiety, it does centralize in the chest in many ways, from a physical reaction. And it had this immediate tonic effect on me. And I she saw it, and it became part of my toolkit. In our sessions, she would guide me through really short meditation practices that became longer and longer. And she even invited me. She and another therapist were doing a weekend retreat. It was one of those day retreats where you spend all day there and then you go home at night, and it was in silence. um, and I mean, that really started my whole journey on changing how I believe that learning that practice at that age, at that time in my life, rewired my entire decision framework. It allowed me to insert this pause of reflection prior to a reaction. And that simple insertion changed everything for me.
Yeah, a lot of people never learn that at all in their entire lives. How to
You definitely see it on Facebook nowadays.
well, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, anywhere, but even
Yeah.
just living everyday life. It's yeah, it ain't easy, and having the wherewithal to be able to take a step back and take a breath is not easy for a lot of people.
Yeah. And
Um,
also just to understand that that little pause gives you agency on how you are going to react to whatever is unfolding in your experience in front of you. And,
so
one thing I'll just say to what I found was, my sister, Vicky, she couldn't do that. It was a gift. She was never able to achieve that state. Her head was very loud, and it was almost like I was watching the alternate reality of my life in her life if I hadn't met that woman at that time.
well, I do. I mean, I know, having met you a few years ago, uh, it was a family situation that uh, just helped me connect with you, frankly. And
Mm,
losing my sister was at the age, and I was 16 and she was
mm,
23, and that had a
yeah,
huge impact on my life. And and I lost my mother 3 years later. Uh,
yeah.
so, uh, but yeah,
You were
it's
so
definitely
young. Yeah.
well, and she didn't get the help she needed either. She was
Hmm.
dealing with a lot of mental issues and some schizophrenia and
Hmm.
manic depression mixed in, and my parents were, going through divorce at the time, and a really bad divorce. But and of the four of us, I'm the youngest. She definitely got the worst of it, or the least amount of care during that period.
Was
But
she
not
the oldest?
no, she was second youngest, so it was we had
Like my
two
sister.
yeah,
Mm,
two older brothers, about 10 and 8 years older than myself, who I'm still
mm.
very close with. Um, so, in your tell me a little bit about kind of finding yourself, I guess, in your late teens, early 20s, and how did you kind of were you a video gamer growing up at 9, 10 years old, or did that come a little later?
It came a little later, probably when I was about 13, 14, and I would hang out in the arcades in
Yeah.
Waikiki and
What,
Westwood
what were
Village.
what what were some of your favorite arcade games? growing up? Stand up.
Definitely asteroids for sure.
Okay.
And then I have a fun desk. I actually just released it, but it was made out of a Defender arcade machine,
Yeah.
and it was super fun. An artist made it. I just released it though, after moving and just wanting to kind of streamline my material things all around me.
Oh, you had the whole cabinet or something, or a side of a cabinet?
Yeah, yeah, it was a desk made out of the
Oh,
machine, deconstructed. It was
oh
super
wow!
cool.
I'd love to
Yeah,
see a picture of that. Defender was a
yeah,
fantastic arcade game.
yeah. I played all of them. Tempest, but Asteroids was really my thing because what I saw in Asteroids, which unlocked a lot of things for me, was there was a moment where I could see the pattern. And once I identified the pattern in the games and the levels and the movement, uh, it was like this huge light bulb moment. And then you could see it when Pac-Man came out. You could see the pattern, and play off one quarter for a really long time.
Oh,
And I
I never got to that kind of capability with. I mean, I spent a lot of quarters in a lot of arcade games, but I don't think I ever recognized a pattern of the asteroids. My, my success with button mashing and just trying to keep up as best I could.
Yeah, I think we all start off that way, but there definitely is a pattern. That's how they're designed, um, and I found, now I know it was probably triggering some kind of flow state in me that I looked at more as a respite, where my head would quiet down. I would focus
Mm.
on the task in front of me. You also have this sense of agency over how you feel when you play video games, and agency over the environment in many ways once you get to a certain point. And the knowledge from playing one game to the next is cumulative in many ways. Because there are mechanics that are consistent throughout. And so it was super fascinating to me. And living in Los Angeles, I was a cute girl. So everybody's like, you should be an actor. And, I did a few commercials, but I was not, I was always kind of a little
So, so,
nerdy, and I hit
so, do
it.
you remember some of the commercials? Did they air?
Yeah, I did one for AT&T, which was some kind of infrastructure experience. I was some kind of office worker, and this flood came in. And then another one I did was for Nike.
Oh,
That I think it pissed off PETA because there was a pie that went into the face of a stuffed deer head.
oh.
And it was
Not that the speakers were made of leather.
yeah, right, exactly. It was a funny commercial, though. It was directed by these two brothers, and that was back in the day where you would get these massive checks as a young person doing them. But then most of my friends in Los Angeles who were in that community in theater and acting, they would earn a living through waiting tables or
Right.
bartending. And I could do graphic design on computers. I did it, I was always into computers. And
So, just
it,
can you tell me like what year we're talking about?
it was a long
Is
time
this?
ago.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but
It was like
late
the,
'80s or
yeah,
early '90s.
late 80s, early 90s.
So late '80s. So late Apple IIe, 2C, early
Yep.
PCs.
Yep. Mostly Apple for the graphic design, working with programs like Quark
Okay.
and early Photoshop, After Effects, those kind of things.
And
Doing
you were just kind of self taught on the. Now, would you call yourself
totally.
a graphic designer or an illustrator, or is more kind of
Back then, I was more of a graphic designer, and
okay?
it was all self taught. And I would make stuff for myself. And people would say, "Oh, would you do that for me?" And pretty soon, I was working at movie advertising agencies, and I always ended up in management. Even with this theater group I was in, I would audition and get in, and then I'd end up on the management team. So I think systems thinking is something that I seem to be just more naturally uh, oriented towards. And yeah, everything's self taught. I made some fits and starts to go to college, but I think there was a part of me that knew if I did, that there was something that wasn't right for me and who I was and how I learned.
Right,
When I was a little kid, my grandparents put me in Montessori school, and I whipped through. They had these packets; they were color coded. I almost feel like it was a game in and of itself, and you would self direct yourself through these packets. And I went through 2 years worth of packets in less than 6 months. And I ended up skipping, it was like a grade and a half. I started off in fourth grade and ended up in sixth grade by the end of the year. And I don't think they do that now, because of the social impact on kids. But at that time, like I felt like I was having a hard time with how slow the curriculum was in
right,
school, and I would get really bored super easily. And I would also challenge the teachers in the lessons in a way that they didn't really like. And
because you were questioning them.
Yeah, and some of it was to provoke because I was a little bit of a shit. But the other one was, sometimes I would see some logic gaps in the narrative, and I went to an all girls school in Hawaii, the same one my grandmother went to. And I had some amazing teachers at that school. And, uh, but there was something deep inside of me that I knew if I stayed in academia for me, it would change who I was as a person, and not for the better.
Right.
And I'm not advocating that for other people. Obviously, there's huge benefits to formal education. My late husband Vic, his cousin was this amazing high school teacher. And, I was always kind of ashamed of my lack of formal education for many years. I mean, now I have enough of a track record that, and also an understanding that my journey unfolded in the way that was right for me. But Vic's cousin had said to me that he had seen so many students, during his career as a teacher, especially in high school. By that time, you can see who the individual is. And he said that he recognized in me some children that school in and of itself could, or some young adults, which I was getting into in high school, um, that it was actually like not good for them in the way
I
the
mean,
curriculum unfolds.
if I had to take a guess, I would guess that the that the girls' school you went to was very good and probably gave you the majority of the skills that you needed. And
100%. Yeah.
yeah, because if I went to I was the only one in my family went to private school, Quaker school,
Hmm.
when my parents were having a rough time. But and
Hmm.
I didn't really appreciate very much until I got to college how well rounded that education was. And I don't think without it, I would have, because and today, I teach part time now in college, and I see, unfortunately, I see so many students that don't have a lot of critical thinking skills
Yeah.
and some basics that you would think they would have.
Yeah. Why is
Going,
that, do you think?
oh gosh, I really, well, I just don't think our education system is designed for the world we live in today, and it's so much on memorization. And I mean,
I saw that even as a young kid,
I mean,
right?
I was never good on the theory side of things, and I was really not, a terribly strong math student, and I was much more applied. And if honestly, if it wasn't for a couple of side projects outside of class, I may not have made it through, because I needed something hands on and applied to feel just to learn better. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of the education today, unfortunately.
Yeah, it
It's
seems like
more, not
it's
so much in college, but more in elementary and high school.
well, but that's when it's the most important,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
But I do think that we're on the verge of seeing a revolutionary transformation of the education system, with AI being able to adapt to the child directly, in much the same way that I experienced at Montessori school really early on. I also, I mean, to be fair, because of my grandfather, every house we had, I had a full reference library to access,
Yes,
right?
you had the most latest version of the Britannica. We had Britannica
Always.
growing up as well,
Yeah.
and I
And
relied on that a lot for book reports. When I was in fifth and sixth grade.
I had the luxury of being able to cut them up for book reports because there were always older versions I could cut up, and because they were always being replaced. So I was very, very fortunate in that area. So I think a lot of like what saved me specifically was learning how to find out things and
Yes.
learning how to figure things out. And some of that I had to do just to, you know, figure out how to feed my sisters and I when my mom was out of it. And, uh, but there's something about that curiosity of finding things out that I think is the most exciting thing about life in and of itself. Like asking the questions and then trying to figure out, how do we do this?
So
Is this even possible?
I guess I want to ask a little bit of a personal question. I mean, you've already been very open already. Um, was there a point where your mother and your sister were kind of able to get on by themselves, and you were able to start focusing and taking care of yourself, or was that always a big part of your growing up and early adulthood?
It was a big part of my whole life until they each passed away. And, in many ways, I've
I'm
always
sorry.
felt a tremendous responsibility for them. With my sister, I definitely have many regrets. And one of them, the biggest regret I have with my sister is, I've been, one of the choices I made very early on was to get sober and get into recovery. I could see that my use of drugs and alcohol at a very young age weren't good for me. It was part of the better decisions I started making in my life. But I watched my sister self destruct. She became this terrible alcoholic, and then ultimately alcohol stopped working and she turned to harder things. And, she overdosed in 2012. I just passed the anniversary of that on December 7th. And uh,
I'm
I,
sorry.
the one time, thank you, Bob. I know I'm not alone in that. I know many, many, many families struggle with having at least one of their family members suffer from addiction. And it is a family illness in many ways. And when Vicky died, about a year and a half before she died, she was in the hospital after a very brutal act of violence. When you do drugs at the level that she did, it makes you very vulnerable to predators. And her whole life she had been like that. Being a child with a mother that was checked out, both of us were vulnerable to predators. And Vicky was in the hospital for about a month, and when she came out, my husband and I went to Hawaii. She was living in her family house in Honolulu, and it was the only time I saw her willing to get sober. And we had tried to take her to 12-step meetings and get her into rehab, and were willing to pay for it. And she would try, and it just didn't connect with her. And she had done some research at the time on the ibogaine treatment. And she was saying, I want to go to this clinic in Mexico and do ibogaine. And we had never heard of it. We were very against it, coming from, more traditional 12-step recovery paths. And we said, no, that's not how you deal with this. We're not going to pay for you to go to some clinic in Mexico to do psychedelics. Like, no, you have to go to rehab. And she was begging us. She had done the research. She really thought it was the thing for her. And we were so close-minded. And, a year and a half later, she was dead. And the really big teaching moment for me in a gut punch was many years after that. After TRIPP got funded, one of our investors, Tim Chang, who's been our first supporter in venture capital, he said, I want you to meet my friend, Martin, who runs this amazing clinic in Mexico. He's built this cool breathing application that uses augmented reality, and he wants to show it to you. And when I met him and he was telling me what he did, I realized that he was one of the medical doctors who worked at that clinic that my sister, he was actually a founder of the clinic, and with Joseph Barsuglia, who is a wonderful research scientist in the psychedelic space. And, Vicky would likely have been under great care with those two people at this clinic. But, because I was so rigid in my thinking on how you deal with addiction, that I was really closed-minded to any alternate approach. And it's a moment I really regret in a big way. And I don't know if it would have saved her life, but uh, yeah.
I mean, I understand. Well, I understand why you feel that way. You know, it's, but you were trying to protect her as well. I would steer away from that, thinking of rigid thinking. It's just what you learn, what you thought were traditional, best methods for getting clean. You know, experimental. I mean, there's experimental stuff all the time, all over the world. It's hard to know what's valid and what's not, and uh, you know, experimental stuff can kill you as well. So I understand why you have that regret, but I would not be too hard on yourself about that. I think you were, at the time, doing the best you could.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bob. That's actually super helpful because, with the anniversary being really recent, I've been thinking about it a lot. And then also, with the rise of psychedelic science, and the research happening in there. I'm not an advocate for those solutions. I don't know enough about um, all the benefits and the applications, and I think it's an area still evolving. But I do think that we live in an amazing time right now when you think about how technology can be used to measure the impact of these alternative treatments and solutions that can be crafted that are more personalized to the person themselves. Um, it gives me a lot of hope that maybe the impact that my family has had could be somewhat reduced for other families. I think about that a lot.
Well, I think that's why those people that choose to work in healthcare or similar field, want to, the vast majority want to have a positive impact on people. And sometimes it's driven from personal history and sometimes it's just driven from wanting to better the world. I think one thing I struggle with sometimes when you're doing anything for good and you're trying to help people and you want to at the end of the day, I think sometimes people get too focused on hitting a home run, and sometimes singles can be enough. And what I tell people, a lot of times I think you have to take comfort in helping just one person.
Yeah.
And because if everyone just tried to help one other person, family member, friend, stranger, things would be quite a bit different situation. We don't have to. You
Yeah.
don't have to
Well,
boil the ocean.
yeah, I want to talk to you about that in more detail. Do you mind if I take a little break just for a second?
Yeah. No, I'm going to go ahead and pause us right now.
Okay.
Okay. So we're back after that brief bio break. Um,
Thanks.
I did. Was there somewhere you wanted to go, or you want me to redirect conversation?
I think we were talking about community, right?
We were talking about community. I was talking about that. When working in healthcare, that I think sometimes you have to focus on one person, one patient at a time, instead of trying to worry about solving everyone's ailment.
Yeah, I think there's something about bringing people together that really fascinates me. I think ultimately that's what I really loved about theater. It's what I loved about building software. It's what I really enjoy about business is, just bringing people together to solve a problem. And I think that there's something really cool when you think about opportunities of how to give people a sense of purpose and mission um, uh, using technology. It's an idea that I'm noodling right now on how to kind of evolve TRIPP. And, you see kind of like the internet, uh, online communities, how they can be super toxic, but they can also be pretty amazing when you look at things like the Human Genome Project. And even in the early days, I don't know if you had it, the SETI application on your desktop. Do
I
you
no,
know?
I do remember it. I think I may have played with it once or twice because I think that started on the Apple II, if I
Yeah.
remember right.
Yeah, and then also you think about like I remember being using Napster. It was a really funny
Yes,
moment. I was
Napster,
downloading
and then
music.
LimeWire.
Yeah, but with Napster, well, the irony of it was I was working at a web development shop that we were coding the RIAA website, which was trying to
Oh,
stop
really?
Napster.
Okay.
And all of us working on it were using Napster to download music, and because we're all young people, it was really funny. But there was an interesting moment because in Napster, a lot of people don't talk about this. They just talk about like free file downloading. But there were these social features. They had implemented this little chat feature that when you connect it to someone's computer to search their music file folder that they had put on Napster, because that's how it worked. It was peer to
Yeah,
peer
yeah. Yep.
transactions and network. It was like a mesh network in many ways. And but I was downloading some French music from someone's computer in France. I was downloading Francoise Hardy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
because I was an eclectic young person, and this guy pops in on the chat in French and starts talking to me. Well, I didn't know what he was saying, despite even living in Canada for a while. My French wasn't that evolved, so I went on. I think it was Alta Vista had about Babelfish or something like that.
Yeah.
I cut and paste what he was saying, and then had it translate my response and send it back to him. He said, "Oh, your French is very good," and and this was like a long time ago, right? And but you think about like how remarkable that moment was. There was another thing too that my on the Irish side of my family, my great great grandparents were well known songwriters. My great great grandmother Maud Nugent Jerome, she wrote Sweet Rosie O'Grady, and they were vaudevillians. They were also founding members of ASCAP, the first 100, and Billy Jerome and Maud Nugent Jerome. And I was able on Napster to find files of brown wax cylinder recordings of their music. And so it was really kind of the beginning, I think, for me, of seeing the potential of how people can connect in unique and different ways that in physical reality you can't. Just they're not physically possible. I can't go to everyone's house and search for their music collection, right? And so I've always been fascinated by thinking about like how do you use these technologies in ways that will enable new experiences. And one of the things I've seen in the VR community from the beginning is a tendency to want to replicate or simulate the physical reality, and it never is as evolved, right? You don't have the olfactory inputs, you don't have the tactile inputs, they're not fully baked with what we experience in the physical world. And but there's all kinds of cool things you can do if you think like, well, what can this technology enable for me that I can't do in the physical world? And that's how we approach a lot of the design work with TRIPP. But really, like that Napster moment was something for me. It was kind of like recognizing the patterns in asteroids. You start to look at
So
like
I have to say,
learning.
I mean, talking about Napster, I did college radio, and it was a lot of fun. And every maybe every couple months or so, I start, I'm just thinking about. I mean, it's just, I mean, as great as Napster and Spotify, are as platforms, it's kind of amazing and a little bit upsetting at the same time the impact that it's had on the music industry. And I think more about independent artists, and it's so hard now to discover music, and for independent artists to make a living. It's
Mhm.
all based on live music, unless
Mhm.
they've got huge listeners on Spotify. But I mean that just in the entire industry that was pretty much, one way for, what, 70, 80 years, almost, completely, non-existent today.
Yeah, and my mother's side of the family very much in the music industry, right? Um, my one of my grandpas, he was head of A&R at Motown, and was a music producer. He was a music producer very early on. Produced Del Shannon, Runaway, discovered Rodriguez,
Mm,
Little Willie John. Like, in the 50s, he had a lot of hit records. I will say, though, that you talk about artists making a living, but even then, the artists didn't make as much as the record companies did. And many of
true.
them died broke, right?
Yeah, it's I mean, we could debate whether it was better then than it is now, but so
Yeah.
let me steer us back a bit before we, because I don't want to. I want to talk about Trip, but I don't want to talk about Trip too much just yet because I'm still trying to understand your segue into the video game industry, and
Hmm.
I saw that you were product manager at eToys, which
Hmm.
I remember wonderfully, but was unfortunately really one of the companies that bid it during the crash, and
Yeah.
uh, and I'm kind of curious, what were you doing around this period at eToys, and then the transition to JAMDAT. And when I saw JAMDAT, that was like, I I
I
well,
was employee
I sent
number
you that.
four.
What's that?
I was employee number four there.
Employee number 4. You're kidding. Well,
Yeah.
where were they? Were they headquartered out of the UK or were they out of LA?
No, no, LA.
Okay.
So at that web development shop that I was working at, that my friend Karen Reed started, Karen was an art director at a graphic design studio, and she split off to start her own web design company, and I went to go work for her. And we did a lot of really cool websites. We did Fox Interactive, we did the Sony Pictures Entertainment site. It was like a company of 14 people. We did that RIAA site. We did the Earthlink start page for Sky Dayton. And then he started an LA tech incubator called E Companies with Jake Weinbaum, who was at Disney for a while. And uh, they bought Karen's company
Okay.
to be the strategic development group at E Companies, which was an LA tech incubator. And I got a check during that acquisition that was the biggest check I'd ever received in my life. I mean, it wasn't life changing, but for a really young person, it was like, wow, I can ski every weekend if I want all winter. And I went out and bought a truck, a sport track, a Ford Explorer sport track with cash.
Ford.
And,
My only new car ever was a '94 Ford Explorer,
yeah, they're
and
great cars.
well, I drove it. I drove it for. I put 260,000 miles on it, and
Oh, that's awesome.
it died on the Beltway in DC back in. And haven't owned a car since. Not that I don't want to, but I haven't had a strong need in downtown Washington. But
Well, that experience for me was another really groundbreaking data point for me is that there's a different way to make money in the world as opposed to just getting hired and getting a salary. And I went, wow. And so it was the best job ever because they had Karen's team prototype startup ideas, and then they had a management team that would sit with us, and we would mock up these startups. eToys, uh, not eParties was one of them,
mhm.
and then we would evaluate whether they should get funded or not. And so it was like the best
Oh,
experience ever. And I went to go work on e-parties, and we launched, and e-companies shut us down 6 weeks later because we just weren't getting the traction. And I was sobbing.
within
And
6 weeks.
Dave Haddad was the CEO of eParties. He just left Warner Brothers after many years of being president of Interactive there. He had worked at Mattel, and I had worked on the Hot Wheels site for Mattel when I was at Karen's company venue. And anyway, Dave and I went and sold the assets for eParties to eToys. That's how I ended up at eToys. So I
Okay.
started my startup career with an epic failure. And, that was kind of awesome to get out of the way, do you know? And as they were shutting us down at e companies, uh, they said to me, after you and Dave do the integration, we want you to consider coming back and working with us on this new cell phone game company that Sprint is giving us some money to start up.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah. So, well,
and
okay. So now
and
I gotta make a little connection for you here, just in parallel.
yeah,
So, let me, digress just for 2 minutes.
yeah,
So
because I
you were,
saw that website you sent me, cool website of the day. I totally remember it. I
you,
think
do
you
you
featured
really, or you
Gladiator.
make,
Yeah,
are you making that up?
you no, you featured Gladiator on it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you were in LA on the West Coast, and evaluating startups. I was so in 90, I don't, I think it was 98, or maybe it was 99, but I ended up contracting for a small company in Northern Virginia called Nascent Technologies. It's like 6 people, but they
Hmm.
they were making they were selling large web-based email systems for telcos, and it was like if a telco wanted its own Hotmail platform.
Hmm.
So I ended up doing some field engineering for them, and was enjoying it. And then they got bought, like within a couple months, from CMGI.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and then you mentioned Alta Vista earlier, and CMGI had bought Alta Vista,
Yep.
and they bought Pets.com. I still have a
Hmm.
hand puppet in the in my storage locker. And they bought like 50 company furniture.com, and they were out of headquartered of Andover, Mass. And so I ended up with a full-time job through this acquisition, and they set up an office in Northern Virginia for CMGI, and they were trying to you know uh, put together like 5-6 acquisitions and try to come up with a common strategy, and get people to like each other and so forth from different companies. But and they had me doing I was doing early wireless internet research, on cell phones, as they were kind of figuring out that business. And prior to that, I had a lot of experience in cellular networking and cellular network planning. And but I was so bored with the job. They just, there was no direction. They didn't really direct me very well. And so I started Cool App Site of the day out of my cubicle, and I was just doing reviews, once a day, first gen, websites, and all those, little black and white pixels. But I was really surprised. Like 6 months in, I was getting 10,000 hits a day by and the industry reading it. And I actually, and you mentioned Sprint. I actually got our content on Sprint's phone deck, um,
Mm.
and FidoNet out of Canada. And
Mm.
I was just talking to somebody the other day, actually when I was in Brussels last week, that I did a compilation, a little book compilation of like 60 of those articles. I'll have to send you one. I still have a few. And sorry, did you hear that ringing, or did only I
Yeah.
hear that ringing? You did. Okay,
No, I
sorry about
heard
that.
it. Yeah.
Because
No
I thought I
problem.
had that. Well, that's the integration of the Apple iPhone into your OS, and everything's so tied in. Um, anyway, I'll try and cut that part out. Um, and Yeah, and I debuted that book at I went to the Mobile World Congress in 2001 in Stockholm. It was my one time in Stockholm. But
Mm.
and then the crash happened, and thankfully I didn't own any CMGI stock. But then I segued into conservation for 10 years and gave up on the internet. So back to you now and JAMDAT. But I
Oh,
remember JAMDAT
I
was
didn't give up. I didn't give up. Yeah.
no, and then JAMDAT was a leading player in those early mobile games. I mean,
Oh
Java.
yeah, I would say
Trying to Java. Yeah, you're trying building for Java 2E, if I remember.
J2ME and Brew, which was
Yeah,
Qualcomm's
yeah.
platform,
Oh, that's
and
right. Yeah.
prior to that, we had Gladiator, which was a multiplayer WAP game. It was very innovative, and we hit our year-end numbers by noon the first day because
Oh
we
my
didn't even
gosh.
know how to forecast our future on that. We would compare it against websites, but
I mean, so
it
you were at the very beginning of that mobile growth,
oh
and
yeah, and we
I
had
remember.
people laugh us out of the room,
Oh, I know,
saying
and I
no
remember the very
way.
first some of the first experiments in video streaming, um,
Mhm.
and now to
Yeah.
see how it is today, it's just unbelievable.
Well, we did some of that even at Venue. We did QuickTime video downloads that were short form and tried to do some streaming stuff. Um, we were going to work on the Apple QuickTime website. That was like one of the last jobs we got, and but we didn't do it because we got acquired. But we were also making these little shockwave games. We
Okay,
made some for NBC, and there was this
the
company
days of
called
shockwave.
Brilliant Digital Entertainment. BDE was a company that we built a lot of little games and websites for, and so it was kind of like an organic evolution getting into the game industry, and they had companies that tapped me for JAMDAT. The code name for it internally was Athens. It hadn't even been named JAMDAT. We named it JAMDAT because those were the first letters on the keypad triple tap.
Oh,
So it would be that was back in the day where you had to triple tap text, and so we thought it would be easy to get to by. So it was kind of a made up name
okay.
through randomize, just pump out all the words that you
So
could.
just to put it in perspective, so you were employee number 4 at JAMDAT in
Mhm.
middle of 2000,
Right.
and then EA or Electronic Arts acquired it in 6 years later.
Yeah,
And
we went
how?
public before we got
Oh,
acquired,
it
though.
did go
So
public. Wow.
yeah, so I think we were the first mobile content focused company ever to go public.
And how many employees were there when you were acquired?
I think there was like 120 when we were acquired. But,
Okay.
one thing that was really, I mean, working for Mitch Lasky, who was CEO of JAMDAT, and, he's a very successful venture capitalist. After JAMDAT, he joined Benchmark Capital, and
Oh,
he
really?
funded Snap, he funded Discord, he funded Riot Games. Very innovative business leader, one of the most fun bosses I ever had, and tough to work for. Very demanding, but a lot of fun. Taught me the fun of business and really gave me a lot of opportunity at that company. He says it's because, I mean, I was a bull in the china shop. I wanted to prove something to myself and everyone around me, maybe because I was very insecure. But I worked so hard and I really loved what we were doing. And
But I
it's
gotta just
definitely,
say, and you should take a lot of satisfaction in what you achieved in like your first 10 years of your career. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And without a formal college education, and not saying that was a requirement or anything, but and with the difficulties you had, I mean, that's just unbelievable. You know, going with a company that goes public and then gets acquired by Electronic Arts.
Yeah, and
That's a career right there.
Yeah, and Mitch teed me up really well at EA. When he joined EA, they gave him mobile and EA Online to focus on, and he had Michael Marchetti run the mobile business, and he had me run EA Online, which was essentially a cost center. And so my team built out a lot of the infrastructure needed for enabling digital revenue streams. They had a team come in after I left, continue to evolve it, but a lot of that infrastructure is still in place, and it drives a lot of their contribution margin. I reported into John Riccatello
Oh,
at
oh,
EA.
I remember. Oh, so he's a founder of Unity.
Well, no,
No.
he was CEO of Unity that took it public, but
Okay. Okay. He was not the founder.
Yeah, he came in and scaled it, which is something John's really great at. And I had a lot of fun working for John as well. Mitch left EA, and I stayed. I stayed for almost 6 years working on cross-platform infrastructure, and I loved it. I had a great time. I love the games industry. The team at EA, I made lifelong friends from that experience. I
So
learned a lot.
I'm
Yeah.
just curious. Was there did you mind going into a much larger corporation? Was there a big cultural change, or it didn't really phase you at all?
It was interesting. I definitely learned a lot. One thing, I think a really good operating principle for me is joining a big company through an acquisition is awesome. You have 18 months to make an impact, right? They treat you like an intrapreneur within the company, right? Like you're being brought in to drive a sea change. You get a lot of support, but you really have to make a dent on some things very quickly, or the sheen starts to wear off, right? And as you mentioned early on, a lot of these acquisitions can fail because the integration of teams into existing cultures, corporate cultures, that transition's not always positive. I think the statistics are 50% or more will
We
fail,
just
and you
have
have
just
to
have to
factor
look at
that in.
AOL Time Warner.
Yeah, or Time Warner and whoever, right? Like it just keeps going. Um, but the Yeah, I loved it. It was great. It was a brand that I already had affinity towards, a lot of the games that EA produced. I was proud to be an employee of Electronic Arts,
What were
and
a couple of the big games that they produced during that period?
Sims, obviously,
Okay.
Battlefield, Medal of Honor. They acquired a lot of game companies.
Yeah.
Madden football. Madden's one of the biggest all-time video games, and FIFA, consistently was number one worldwide. They had also done some pretty advanced things, like John Riccatello had this idea. For a game. It was called Majestic, and it was kind of an alternate reality game. Like you would get phone calls, and um, and the story would unfold. I mean, it's perfect for now. Right, now's the time to do that game. It was so early on, but it was something we talked a lot about at JAMDAT, and uh, so it was exciting to be there. was a great company. Still is. It just is going through a major acquisition right now with the Saudis, which seem
Are
to
they
be
are they being acquired, or
growing.
they're acquiring
Yeah,
somebody?
yeah, they're
Oh, are
being
they? Is it
acquired.
going private equity or?
No, the Saudi sovereign fund PFI, I think, is buying Electronic Arts, so they're going to
Okay.
go private. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So they are taking them private. Interesting.
Hmm.
Um, so tell me about the years between EA and I guess and Trip. What was because it looks like you did a few different things. I don't
Yeah,
know what
I left.
Makima was.
Oh, yeah. So I left EA. I went to a cloud gaming company called Gaikai, and it was funded by Benchmark and Qualcomm. So they knew me. And Dave Perry, who created the Earthworm Jim game,
Yeah.
he was the
Yep.
CEO of it. And they
Okay.
had this cloud based infrastructure where they were working with Limelight Networks to deploy custom GPU racks in the cloud. And it's so interesting because now everyone's doing that to drive AI. But at the time, it was to enable game streaming.
Okay.
And we looked very closely at Gaikai and their biggest competitor OnLive when I was at EA. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. The Gaikai team showed up. They had Crisis, which is a very hardcore PC based video game, streaming to an Android tablet that was like an $80 tabloid. Did not have the processing power to run that game. And, you know, it was an acceptable enough experience where you could actually play the game. And I went, wow.
Okay.
And so, when you have these experiences in hindsight, you look at like all the things you were learning. It was a completely different way to code an application. The application on the device was a very thin client that was essentially doing traffic shaping of the packets going back and forth from the game service or the GPU in the cloud. And it also gave me a lot of visibility into how that last mile delivery is really important for a good quality experience and
Yeah.
latency. And so Gaikai got acquired by Sony Playstation. It ended up
Okay.
driving their game streaming service, which
So
has
so
been a
Gaikai ended up it was kind of the basis for Sony's online streaming today.
yeah, and it needed to ultimately be plugged into bigger infrastructure. And similarly, like how YouTube really did need to be acquired by someone like Google so that, you could get sort of the cost per stream to a manageable, deal with the unit economics that are in a healthy way. But the interesting thing about Gaikai was, we all made a bit of money off that deal. It was an all cash acquisition. And many of us invested in Oculus through that because six of the Gaikai team members went to go join Palmer and Brendan Uribe, who worked with us. He went to be the CEO of Oculus. So we all invested in Oculus, and
Oh
that
wow. Okay.
is kind of what really sparked my interest in VR. Because obviously, when you have an investment, you're kind of following along. And Brendan invited me, my cousin Keanu, and
Was
my
that
old
happening
husband Vic.
before? Was that before or after the Kickstarter?
It was after the Kickstarter, and it was before Facebook bought them. So
Okay. Well,
it was
I
the
would imagine it was before Facebook bought them. Yes.
Yeah, so it was when they needed to actually like make it happen and get it launched. And Brendan's an awesome, awesome operator, wonderful person to work with. We had the best time working together at Gaikai. He's been a
What does
supporter
he
of
do these
TRIPP.
days?
He's running Sesame, the voice AI platform.
Okay.
Yeah, the one that I mean, it's remarkable. Their voice agent is amazing, and he's got some other things in the works I can't really talk about, but I'm always excited to at least put as much as I can into anything that Brendan is doing, because he's an exciting entrepreneur. Anyway, so that we went down to the Oculus office in Orange County. And Brendan wanted Keanu to try the new version of VR, being Neo from The Matrix. And
Mhm.
so we all went down and they were all excited that he was coming. And, it was, again, one of those moments the whole ride home. I kept thinking, wow, could you, like, because the experiences were all really scary. I think if you look back at the beginning of the VR experiences when Oculus was coming to market, they were all pretty, like, fear, trigger fear, very viscerally, like make you feel like you're
Well,
walking on a plank or you're going to fall off a cliff. And
actually, I guess I'm glad I didn't. That wasn't so. My first experience, if I can for a second, is was on the HTC Vive, and it was Space
mm,
Pirates.
mm-hmm,
And so that was, maybe early 2016. I
mm-hmm,
never had, I didn't try I didn't have a DK1. Um, but what was so exciting for me at the time was I was just so impressed with the quality of the first generation game. That to me, again, I started with an Atari 2600, so to me that was the
yeah.
equivalent for VR, and I thought, man, this if this is what first gen is like, what will it be like in 5 6 years? But that's really what got me extremely excited.
I wasn't that excited about the games in VR, and I still don't play a lot of them. I don't know. I find uh, them not as compelling as these other use cases. So you could see right away. Well, on that day, it really stuck with me, this question: if you could generate fear that easily in a person, what else could you make them feel?
Mhm.
Through the power of immersion, and ultimately pulling on that question led me to TRIPP and the idea of TRIPP. But you know, when you look at VR in general, uh, Beat Saber for me was really interesting because you could immediately feel the flow state it was triggering.
Mhm.
It was fully immersive. You're getting real time feedback and reward communication. There's embodiment. The skill challenge ratio was so well balanced in that experience. And it's similar to like how I felt playing Guitar Player the first time with the rhythm
Right.
bass, right? Like it really, like, you have a different relationship to self, your relationship to time shifts, and you get in a zone that is incredibly satisfying from just a human
I
experience.
think it's still one of the top games for VR.
Beat Saber.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Res Infinite is another one that I really loved because, it was designed to kind of trigger synesthesia. And so I just got really fascinated by the concept of, could you create an experience that was seeking the effect first, as opposed to it being a secondary byproduct of the game play and the game narrative, and just go for the effect it would have on the person. And so you start digging into the research on that. I was looking into it and reading some of the research that Giuseppe Riva had done on triggering states of awe by using VR, playing with scale, etc. Some of the stuff that Walter Greenleaf and Skip Rizzo had produced. And obviously, I could see from a business standpoint that when they had started working on that, those initiatives from a research standpoint, there was never uh, in anyone's sights a commercially viable version of a headset that could be done at scale. But because of my relationship to the Oculus team, et cetera, I could see, oh, we're about to see that. Right. And so, could this be the thing to lean into at this time? In much the same way that when we started JAMDAT, everyone would say, you can't play. No one's going to ever want to play a game on their cell phone. And I would go, well, I don't know, I kind of would, right? And could you use VR to create alternate states of reality without any kind of substance that could be architected to be beneficial? And that led me to the idea for TRIPP. And then, it was combined with some personal stuff, which I've spoken about very publicly, that my husband, who was a wonderful, wonderful man, a beautiful meditation practice he had based in the Tibetan tradition. And he got diagnosed with cancer shortly after that trip to the Oculus office in Orange County. And he was gone very quickly. And, emerging from grief, which kicked my ass, it required that I ask for professional help, even,
Mm.
which was very humbling to me. And it's part of the reason why I talk about it publicly, because I think, like,
Well,
as
was
we
it?
get older, we want to be noble,
Can I ask? Was it that humbling? Because it sounded like, if I remember, you latched on to that um, support in your late teens that seemed to have a significant impact on helping you with the
Mm,
meditation.
I think as a business person, and especially working with a bunch of dudes in the game industry, I had kind of developed a persona of like, oh, I can handle anything, you know? And then also being in
You
sales
became
a
a tech
long
bro.
time. Yeah, I became a tech bro. But also being, sober a long time, really active in the recovery community, supporting a lot of people, kind of being there for everyone else. And there was a lot of humility in realizing I couldn't muscle my way through grief.
Right.
And there's also what I understand now, at least, my interpretation of what I went through, watching my husband suffer at the end of life, kind of, well, it got me into some weird state of PTSD.
Mm.
And
Can I ask why did he suffer?
cancer pain is no joke, even with drugs. And also because he was uh, had a Buddhist practice, he really wanted to be alert during the death experience for him. So for a long time, he didn't want to take any kind of medication to deal with the cancer pain. But at a certain point, it just became too much for him. Yeah, we had to bring hospice in to help us manage his comfort level at that point.
Yeah, I'm sorry for you having to go through that, and I just experienced hospice for the first time earlier this year. So um,
Yeah, it's a wonderful area and a really important area to support and have to make sure that people know it's available to them too. I think if anything, I wish I had brought them in earlier because they were so helpful and knowledgeable. Like because I wanted to be the noble caregiver, and I needed help. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can't. That's where you need a big community. Fortunately for us, our friend community was so massive and so created so much buoyancy for both of us during that the tendency is to want to be very private through that and to suffer through it, but you need people to show up for you. I mean, just even physically, because he was a big man, I couldn't lift him
Hmm.
myself, do you know? So just having help and that kind of support, and then making sure that someone was with him so I could get some sleep. That was, I think, one of the most difficult things. So after he passed, there was a recovery period of navigating what was happening to me emotionally, internally, but also restoring my physical health and then coming through that, and I did go to a grief recovery group. The Our House organization in Los Angeles is an amazing program. They really, really helped me, and they match you with people your own age with their own type of loss. So I was in a group of people my age, around my age, who had lost a spouse, very different from someone maybe older, because the likelihood of us getting married again, was there. But, you know, just knowing I wasn't alone through how I was feeling really helped. And then I eventually had to go to a therapist to kind of get unstuck on just sort of reliving those last 8 weeks of Vic's life. And she really helped me start thinking about, how do I rebuild my life going forward in a new way, on my own. And that's where I realized it was also time for me to be CEO. I had helped everyone else's ideas come forth and been a part of that and contributed to it. But what was my idea? And I kept going back to that moment at the Oculus office and going, could you make someone feel something positive with this technology? And then, of course, once I started noodling that, the big question, which is where I think a lot of companies in VR don't spend enough time on, especially on the healthcare side. Yes, you can make someone feel awe and wonder, especially the first time they go into a VR headset. Uh, just the experience of being in an alternate reality from the one your body is physically in and of itself is like, wow. But can you do it the second time? Can you do it the third time? How do you get them back in the headset when they're not walking around with it and like you have your mobile phone in your pocket every day? Those were all the questions I immediately knew, as somebody who had built a lot of software products that, some that have been very successful. I started asking very early on in our journey.
So do you think with what you just said, do you think the struggles of the space today, and let's talk about VR, virtual reality specific, gaming, full
Mhm.
immersion,
Mhm.
that is that the adoption is directly related to the the ergonomics of the device. The is it as simple as that, or is it much more complicated than that?
uh well, I think it's actually very complicated. I'm disappointed, as I'm sure many of us are, in how long it's taken to see the vision that all of us started thinking was going to show up. Some of it is just the discomfort of the headset and the isolation of it. And going back to, what we learned working at Gaikai, the heaviness of the device is challenging. And if you can offload the GPU processing to the cloud and have an experience with something that's much lighter weight, that you can really have more persistent in your life, is that going to be what's needed to make it um, much more broadly adopted? Um, I think so. Can you get that feeling of full immersion? I'm not sure yet how that happens, but I think you can do a lot with spatial. So I do think, though, that, I was just looking at a review today from TRIPP, because our CS team always surfaces up a review of the week. And we got some wonderful reviews over the weekend. Still, people saying this app is always there for me whenever I need it, and it's changed my life. Something I'm very proud of. So I still think there will always be a use case for immersion plus experiences like TRIPP. Um, but is it going to be something that you do all day long, every day? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see that. I think
With
we'll see something in augmented reality and glasses, lightweight glasses, or and audio, uh, AI enabled audio devices. Um, but
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I don't know the answer to this. I'm curious what's lost from an impact on the brain, or an effect when you go from full immersion to really good AR. But you're still very aware of your surroundings, and does that have a? I mean, let's talk about maybe anesthetics, or using VR for pain distraction. Does
mhm.
it still have the
Yeah,
same
I mean, I
effects?
think I think that that use case will survive what's happening in the industry. So, I mean, worst case scenario, a version of TRIPP can always be made available on a VR device that can be used to facilitate essentially a respite that's architected to help you shift how you're feeling. And we have enough published research out there from the research community who has proactively picked up our application and studied it to say that we are very effective, at least some of the early data seems to indicate, at de escalating someone from an agitated state. So, you know, I have a sauna in my backyard, and sauna is something I use. Am I in my sauna all day long working? No, right? But I use it to promote good health for me, and and there's benefits, right? Like my husband will use it every day. He's faithful. I use it when I need it. And
Right.
so I think that use case for VR will always be present because there is enough data, and it will continue to evolve, and where you can measure the impact of, like what you said, the effects on the brain. And
Let
so
me ask. Let me
that
ask you.
that
Go
exists.
ahead.
Is it going to be mass market? I don't know.
Well, so kind of on this topic, let me ask you a couple of hard questions. Um,
Hmm.
I'm gonna correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna assume that you're very proud of what you've built to date and the effect you've had on a significant number of people. Whatever the
Hmm.
number significant is, I don't know, but more than
Well,
one,
we've had
less
three
less than a
million
million. What's
3 million downloads.
3 million downloads? So
Yeah, which is pretty big in our category, right? But compared to mobile, et cetera, it's petite,
right.
right?
So how do you, and I think this is the challenge that a lot of companies have when they're trying to build something for good and for having a positive impact on people. How do you balance the impact you're having on individuals and a large number of individuals versus trying to make a sustainable company? And because
Well,
I
yeah,
think the last thing anyway would want to see um, is TRIPP go away because it's not financially successful enough or whatever that success factor is.
yeah, I agree with you. It's the thing that keeps me up at night. We are consistently, in fact, this week, the only wellness focused product on the MetaQuest store in the top 50 of best-selling apps of the week, right? They display that list. Trip is in it often. There's no other app that in our category that appears on that list. Um, and yet, I feel like at times I'm running a nonprofit, right? Which makes me crazy because we cost more to operate than we make. And so that's a struggle, and I've been able to raise venture capital, but at a certain point, it becomes really challenging to raise more capital for a market that is just not growing. And so for us, though, because one of the core tenets of my career has been cross platform content distribution. It's what I did at JAMDAT. It's what I did, how we shipped and distributed games across all different types of cell phones. There weren't any standardization back then, right? And same thing at EA and Gaikai. Really, the promise of cloud gaming was to reduce the friction of streaming to multiple consumer touchpoints. So we launched Trip with a mobile application, knowing it would be a key driver of getting people back into the headset and to be able to stay in touch with our customers when they weren't in headset. And I think it's been a huge contributing driver of our long-term customer retention, which is an outlier in VR. And then I am excited about this idea of layered reality. So we have never really focused solely on VR only. We were one of the first apps on the Nreal platform. Now it's Xreal.
Mm-hmm.
We have an experience created in Lens Studio for Snap. We are already looking at the Meta Ray-Bans wearables SDK that Meta released. Some of my devs went up to the Android XR workshop that they had last week. And, Trip is one of the more broadly deployed applications in VR as well.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, like, we have to grow more. And so I see doubling down on mobile and our AI features really an important focus for us because our AI agent can also be available to you on AI glasses, any kind of AI audio. So it doesn't have to only be immersive. You can have immersive audio and persistent
So
support through audio.
let me ask you another really difficult question.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm asking this because we're talking about a category that is not it's not a traditional game. It's not it's the outcomes and the purpose of it is very different from you know most industries. What does what does success look like at the end of the day for you, and what does it look like for your investors? Are they looking for do they have a different perspective expectation of what success for TRIPP looks like?
Well, I mean, they all want what they call a 10 bagger, right? You know, a 10x multiple on their investment. Do they believe in VR today as much as they did in 2017 when we first got funded? I don't think so, right? Because the market's taken a long time to realize um, in a big way. So I think like being a VR focused company, if you're solely VR focused, it's hard to raise capital right now. So how do you run a sustainable business? For us, it's necessary to scale cross platform. I think as an entrepreneur who takes venture capital, I am obligated to do my best to get them their money
Mm-hmm.
back and make them whole, right? And uh, that's sort of the minimum that you want to shoot for. But I think, it's always a risky investment. Startups, very few succeed, right? And a fund's returns will be a certain percentage of the fund allocation. Like, not everyone's going to be a home run. So I think, but for me, I look at the success, the impact that we've had on people's lives is something I think is a huge metric of success. The fact that we, even on our mobile app, make as much money that we do now, we're just starting to monetize mobile as well. So you can subscribe to TRIPP without having a headset. And hopefully you'll want to go cross platform because it's, again, going back to that layered reality concept. But yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'd love to get us to a path to profitability. And then, I do want to make money for my investors. They believed in me at a time. And I know that my team as well, I want to see them have some of those great outcomes that I've experienced in my career. It was a game changer for me to be part of the JAMDAT team. I don't think I could have raised money for TRIPP having not had a few successes in my back pocket to show up with an idea and even get the meetings. I'm in a women's group, and this is something I try to explain to them because they go, "Oh, I can't get funded because I'm a woman." And I just go, "No, that's not what it's about. It's if you were a man without a track record, you wouldn't even get the meetings either." Do you know? It's not. I mean, it's people invest repeatedly in many of the same entrepreneurs. You could look at that as being a boys' club, but in many ways, it's more like a winner's circle, right? Because it mitigates risk to fund repeat entrepreneurs. And so, how do you get yourself into one of those companies that looks like it's going to hit a home run pre-Series B, ideally, and be part of that team because it'll open up so many doors for your own ideas downstream? That's something that I constantly communicate to people who ask for my advice on certain things. So, my main goal is I want to make my team money and have a success in their back pocket, make my investors money as well, and do it in a way that is purpose driven and having real impact on people's lives. Like, that was what emerged for me after Vic died, that I really wanted to take my efforts and make a difference in the world. And I think we have achieved that, but now I got to make the company successful, beyond the small arena that we've been able to lead and become a category defining and category leader in this space. But how do I hit a home run with this? It's something that keeps me up at night. I'm constantly thinking about it, and I'd love to hear if you have any ideas, Bob. Let me know.
Are you looking at having TRIPP on the Switch and PlayStation?
Hmm. That's interesting. You mean 2D versions of it?
Well, yeah, but even with the Switch, it's mobile for a lot of people, and it's a
Mm.
nice, really big mobile screen.
Yeah.
And
One of
and
my
I
team
just think
members.
about the COVID days when Animal Crossing was such a big relief for so many people going through COVID because it was just such a relaxing, easygoing game.
TRIPP was too. That's where we saw a lot of our growth. Uh, we're focusing on mobile right now and building out some uh, features that ultimately will start to scale out to uh, give you a more connected feeling to other people. Um, you know, as we're evolving our AI feature set, and I shared some of it in Iceland, the question keeps coming up for me. It's like, if you ask yourself certain questions, they might lead you to that thread, right, that you pull on, and some ideas. I'll riff on for a couple weeks and then I poke holes in it and I go, oh, it's not worth chasing. But the one that I've been thinking about is how do you use AI to, how do you put the human into the AI, the humanity into the AI? How do you use it in a way to connect people and give a sense of meaning and purpose? And there's something in that idea that I look at the evolution of TRIPP and how do you build in network effects through that I think are going to become more and more important, going back to the beginning of this conversation of like the impact of an extended family, how that makes a child feel safer. I think as we get more and more isolated in our experiences through the use of technology, et cetera, and even the content glut that we're seeing of the AI slop hitting
Yeah,
our feeds every day, I think you'll see young people start to want to play musical instruments, and become artists and community coming together for live
I was
experiences.
I don't know where I saw it. It was just in the last couple of days. Some uh, actor or actress, but there's somebody pontificating that we're slowly becoming analog again. And like I still can't. I mean, as much as I've tried, I can't enjoy reading on a tablet. No, a
Mm.
magazine or a book or a newspaper, and uh, there's something visceral to that. But
Well,
um,
books for me were my first virtual reality device, right? Like
sure, the
I would
original.
escape into them and you're visualizing worlds, etc. But I have noticed because of the nature of my work is reading all day, I'm online, I'm reading email, I'm interacting, I'm reading, I'm writing. I don't enjoy reading the same way anymore when I'm I guess whatever downtime means to somebody who
Well,
is
actually, I hear where you're coming from. You might just a suggestion is you might just try 15, 20 minutes as you're going to bed. I mean, as much as I would love to read for an hour, I sometimes just can't. But just even getting through 5 pages and 5 pages a night, and then before you know it, you're halfway through. And I found you don't have to read a book in a day. You can take 6 months to read a book too.
I will try that, especially avoiding screens before going to bed. That would be a good
I do.
alternative.
So just to kind of close out, I have a feeling that you're going to figure it out. I mean, I think it might take 10 more years, but I think there are so many opportunities. We are going through such an unbelievable sea change that on a day to day, you don't. It's hard to see those sea change impacts. You see it occasionally, but I do think. when we look, I think 2030 is going to look radically different than
What do you
2025.
think it's going to look like?
Um, I think honestly, I think it depends on how quickly the cost of humanoid robots comes down and where we see that inserted in society. Because I do see some of the early successes for that in elderly care, um, uh, support, lifting somebody up that you can't lift by yourself. I think there's just a lot of
Mm.
interesting things there. And
Yeah, I'm excited about taking our AI agent COO, which is kind of designed around real compassion. And how do you embody that? And how does the community inform it? Um, there's something interesting to me about that. Like, how do you use the top of our funnel in a way to influence how a caregiving embodiment of emotional support might be?
yeah, I just
You
met there was a startup company I came across in Brussels last week, and a couple of guys from Berlin, and they built an AI avatar for elderly, for an elderly person to be able to carry conversation on with.
Yeah, I
And
mean, we have a lot of elderly people using our AI already. Uh, I'm not, I don't love the whole digital avatar concept.
I don't
I
either,
think it's,
but the reality is, I mean, having seen my father in the last 2 years in an elderly care facility, um, there is so much isolation and loneliness, even in a care facility where there are other elderly people around you. Those individuals are very isolated, depending on their individual
I'm not saying
situations.
we don't support them with AI. I just don't love the concept
No,
of
no, yeah.
cartoon
Well, what
avatars.
if what if it was a humanoid robot as an AI?
Well, yeah, I'm totally down with that. But all those elderly people can call our phone number and talk to our AI. It'll speak 30 different languages to
Oh,
them right now. Do you
it's like
know? Uh,
calling Santa 30 years ago.
yeah,
The
call
976 number.
833. Yeah, 833 hi Kokua, and we won't charge you. You just can call and talk, and it'll uh, remember what you said from one call to the other. You don't have to create an account. And that's an
What,
interface that older people are very comfortable with. So they don't need to look at a screen and talk to a cartoon, you
what's the
know?
numbers again? Can you give me the numbers directly?
Yeah, 833
Yeah.
hi Kokua, Kokua.
Oh, so just HI co
Yeah, four
Kua.
four 446. Wait, hi, no, 445. I'm looking at the phone keypad. 6582.
Okay. I will be
Yeah.
sure to add
Yeah,
that
try it.
to the note.
833.
I
Yeah.
still think I think there's an enterprise opportunity we still haven't cracked yet. I still believe, and whether a full immersion headset's the right form factor or not, but I think there's such a great opportunity for
Yeah,
just
I would
supplying
love to
employees with
do.
a mental health application, whether it's TRIPP and or something else, or other complementary, and
Yeah,
exercise.
I think a trip can definitely, and because we can also be accessed without having the headset, it supports all employees because not everybody
Yeah.
loves being in the headset.
Well, exactly.
And
And
so they can call the phone number, they can download our mobile app. We have our AI, we have our VR environments, which are super supportive. And yeah, I think enterprise is a good focus, but the challenge with early deployments that I've seen when we had some pretty awesome enterprise customers in our early days. I think in general, just even getting people to keep the headsets charged
yeah,
is operationally a challenge. Then, when you get into hospital environments, having them be connected is a challenge. So, we're doing an NIH study with the New York Office of Mental Health right now. And we have learned that we have to add separate hotspot and connect the devices to, because of the hospital Wi-Fi access issues.
Yep.
We've been working with New York Office of Mental Health for several years now, so we've been able to debug a lot of that. And they just got a very significant NIH grant in the category of schizophrenia, and they got a fast track award, and it'll have a lot of fMRI imaging in it at Cornell Weill, and so I'm excited about it. But operationally, there's still some issues with the devices in field, right?
Yep. Yep.
And if you talk to a lot of the enterprise and clinical focused VR companies, they struggle with, it's easy to get that first agreement to some extent, but do you get the renewals, right? Especially in enterprise wellness, it's a very shiny object.
Yeah.
They're always bringing in new things. They don't always renew the contracts. And so those are the metrics that matter in that business, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying, no, I'm not saying it's easy at all. It definitely, I mean, it requires success on both sides. I mean, it requires a committed organization
Yeah.
and HR department to follow through and stay on top of it.
Yeah. Who do you think's doing that right now?
I don't have an example to
Enterprise.
point out to you. I
Yeah.
maybe in a year I can give you one.
Yeah. There's the logistics things are operationally, I think, challenging, but if they can be solved, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there.
So where should people go if they want to give Trip as a holiday subscription or
Go to
gift?
trip.com. Yeah, go to trip.com. The Meta 3S Meta Quest 3S device. It's a great price. I think they're selling it this holiday under $200. The whole family can use it. There's wonderful fitness apps on there. We just did a wonderful promotional offering with FitXR, a team we really like, and they have one of the top apps on the Meta Quest. And uh, so, using it for that is a great use case. And uh, you can buy, we have a whole gift card um, uh, experience on trip.com that you can buy for somebody and ship it to them
Okay.
with their Meta Quest. I think
Actually,
it's good.
that's
We're also available. We just launched on the Samsung Galaxy XR uh, um, device that Samsung did with the Google team and with Qualcomm.
yep.
And that's a great device. And we're one of the top meditation apps on the Apple Vision Pro, another wonderful device. So, depending on how much you want to spend, Trip is there. We're
Depending on your
also on the
budget.
PlayStation. Yeah, we're on PlayStation VR as well.
Oh, you are?
I
Okay.
think
Okay.
we're one of
Oh,
the only wellness apps on there.
well, yeah. I mean, well, if you're already in VR, you might a 2D version might be an easy opportunity and just maybe
Yeah,
compare.
well, we're working on it on mobile right now,
Okay.
and then we can expand to other screens. But our Trip mobile app, you can try it for 7 days free. We just launched a really cool feature that you can create your own voice avatar. So you can change the voice of our AI to your own voice. And we've seen people do some really creative things. You can create as many versions of voices you want. And we've seen people even have their loved ones create voices that they can select as the voice that guides them. And one man told us he had his wife do it. I mean, his mother, who's at end of life. And another person said they had their 9-year-old son create a voice avatar, and they loved being guided and coached by in the voice of their child. So I think these go back to that thing that I was saying. these feature ideas that we come up with. It's like, how do you enable something you can't experience in real life, in the physical world using technology? So, and then we have an amazing audio catalog of awesome meditations from the Ram Dass organization, Alan Watts, but also beautiful ambient music, sound frequencies, 8 hour sleep playlists that are designed for different outcomes to help you sleep more deeply. And so, yeah, it's a fun arena to play in this concept of how do you support someone with multiple layers of reality, even if it's just ambient sound in a way.
Yep. So it's Tripp with two P's,
Yeah.
TRIPP.com.
Yeah.
Nanea, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you for
Thank you
being
so much,
as
Bob.
open as you have been. And I wish you
Yeah.
the best Hanukkah and Christmas and Happy New Year. And I don't know. Well, let's see what 2026 holds for us.
Yeah. Well, one thing can I just say before we end? Thank you to you, Bob, for everything you do for this community. You bring a lot of thought leadership on your own and create these forums that I have felt very supported by in my journey as an entrepreneur. And I'm just very grateful to be part of it. And what you've done is really an amazing contribution. So thank you for that. And yeah, let's all stay alive over the next 24 months and see what unfolds. We live in the most incredible time to be working in technology. And we're on the verge of seeing real experience on demand happen on multiple fronts. And obviously, that can be used in positive ways, which is, you know, ultimately my goal. But there's a lot to be concerned about too, and we need communities like yours to come together to share those concerns and focus on solutions.
Well, Nanea, thank you. That you made my day with those comments and close to tears. But thank you again. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it. Take care.
thank you. Bye, Bob. Happy holidays. Bye.